You would think after a while the Sadducees and the Pharisees would learn better. Again and again we see them in the Gospels coming forward to Jesus and challenging him, trying to trick him, trying to trap him in words and in deeds and in all these different ways to try to get him to compromise himself. And again we see Christ take their question, take their trick, and turn it on its head. And the Sadducees and the Pharisees are then made fools. Today, right after the Pharisees, or after the Sadducees have been made fools, the Pharisees take their shot, and they are proven in the same way foolish. They ask, which is the greatest commandment? And it is a trap, because if he says any single commandment or any single aspect of the law, they can jump on him and say, well, what about all the other aspects? So instead, Jesus sums up the entirety of the law into 2 commandments. Love God and love your neighbor. And it's funny because this isn't a rejection in any means of the old law. This is a fulfillment. If we look at the 10 Commandments, if we look at the law and what they taught, it can be summarized in these 2 rules, in these 2 ways of living out our Christian identity. Because what is it to love God than to keep holy the Sabbath day, than to not take his name in vain, than to not worship any pagan idols, than to not worship any other gods except him? That is to love God. And what is to love our neighbor then? To not covet, to not lie, to not steal, to not harm, to not kill. All of these, again, can be summed up in to love your neighbor as yourself. So we see Jesus take their question and answer it in a new way. To take it again and turn it on its head, to take what was usually framed in the negative, thou shalt not, thou shalt not, thou shalt not, and to put it as a positive, thou shalt. You shall love God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And really this displays the relationship we have with the Old Testament. By no means do we ever reject the Old Testament. No, it is the forerunner. It lays the groundworks for what Christianity is. But then Jesus takes it and he fulfills it. He makes it into something new and greater. We have an example of this in our own Mass here today. During the Eucharistic prayer, during when we hold up the precious wine that becomes the precious blood, what are the words we say? The new and everlasting covenant. The covenant that was first established with the Jewish people, and Jesus establishes again and fulfills and makes it into something greater, so that what was initially just something with one group of people, one small group, one nation and amongst the whole world, is now for all people, for all nations, for all languages, all races, all tongues, for everyone. And that's why he establishes it for everyone. And that's why he can give you just these 2 rules. Because if we follow these 2 rules, we come to the realization that if we love God and love our neighbor, and everyone is our neighbor, well then everything else falls into line. And the faith can be that universal faith. And that Christian path can be the path that each and every one of us can follow.